Okay, hi everyone. We're going to be doing something a little bit different today. I've had a ton of questions about 1/1 stitching and how I do it, and if I do this and if I do that and how I do this. So I just thought I'd show you what I did. So this is actually a token of love. This is the piece by Brenda Gervais that I was working on during my last video. And I'm going to show you, so this piece is all done in overdyes. And I think the way that you stitch normally will have, sorry, I'm just setting up and threading my needle. The way that you stitch normally will impact how you stitch 1/1 as well. So when I stitch, in general, if I'm working with one thread, and I'm sorry, I'm doing the best I can with lighting, I do a pin stitch, and I do it from the front. It's Nicola Parkman's method, and I leave a tail on the front and lock it into place. There are no cross stitch police, and there are no hard and fast rules. I think you could probably find a million different ways to get a similar result. So if someone you know does it differently, good for them. This is the way that I do it. And you can see, I mean, you're seeing pretty close. You cannot see any start or stops of threads. I dare you to find them. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to do some of this fill in, and we're working on this section here. So I'm using a rather large needle. This is a 26. Remember that this is a 28 count fabric. So you can use a smaller needle if you prefer. I like the 26. It kind of opens the holes and makes it a little easier. So I'm just going to go in, and I'm using cotton threads. Now, when this is the way that I stitch normally, I start in the bottom left-hand corner, and I go up to the top right, come down at the bottom right, and go up to the top left. So you can certainly use this method to apply it to how you stitch. So I'm just gonna, the shorter the better for me. I like to play a lot of floss chicken, but I'm just going to put my finger on it and hold it. Now I'm using a Morgan hoop, so I'll show you that. It certainly makes stitching two-handed much easier. I'm gonna come up and pull my thread through, and be very careful so I don't pull that all the way through, and I'm gonna go back in through that hole, pull it all the way. And now because this is my starter thread, I like to lock it in tight, which you don't have to do, but sometimes that bottom tail will sneak out on you when you cut that thread. So I like to go one more time, and a lot of times what I'll do is from this vantage point here, I'll trim my thread there. And now as I go back through that hole, if there is a little tail there, it's going to pull it to the back. Now that is locked on there. I suppose if I pulled it really tight, you could pull it out, but you have to remember you're going to do your second leg of that cross over the top of it and lock it in. So there's no way it could get snagged or pulled out. However, I always, even if I'm using overdyed, it's how I've stitched everything I have ever shown you. And it's probably very contrary to anything you've ever heard, because everybody tells you have to do 1x at a time, and I'm here to tell you you can do what you want. So what I do is I always go one row at a time, whether I'm using overdyes or not. And you can see this motif down here. You can see the beautiful variegation. It was done the same way. So I'm just going to go up into the top and down in the bottom here. The one thing that you, when you're stitching 1/1, this is a 28 count Lugana, you do not want to pull your stitches too tight. You want them just to lay on top of your fabric, because I will, in fact, on this one, you can see it. If I pull too tight, you can see that it slips right under that last stitch, and it kind of just, well, it didn't actually. But it can slip under, the fabric and get and absolutely disappear, and it'll actually move to the next hole. It hasn't done that. We'll see a spot where it does that. And I just go all the way across. And now I'm going to cross them all the way back. I'm using a pretty big needle. It's because I only had a needle up here. I'd probably use a 28 just because it's easier to get in these holes, but this is fine. I'm also at kind of a funny angle so that I can have the camera here. Okay, and you can see that's stitching 1/1. I'm only wearing reading glasses, no magnification, and I'm stitching at a super weird angle here. And I can still see it. This may be catching a little something there. And I'm just going to push it back through and go back up through the top hole. And then I'm going to come up through the bottom and I'll do the next row the exact same way. Okay, and I pulled that one tight, but I hope you can see that. Try and get my hand out of the way there. Oops. Wrong hole. I have it kind of at an angle so that my phone can pick it up. So I'm trying to, because my phone is on a stand in front of me. So I have the hoop is a bit at an angle away from me, so it's kind of hard to see. I think I went through the wrong hole there. And talking while cross-stitching is not my strong suit either. Okay, and that's all there is to it. There are going to be instances where you'll see, like here, where I may have pulled it too tight and it kind of slips, and your thread can slip under it can slip right under the thread that's running perpendicular. And if that happens, you just don't pull it so tight and let it lay right on top of your fabric. And then when you put your second leg of the stitch in, it will lock it in place and won't allow it to fall back. And so it's not going to move once you get that second block in. I just snagged a, hang on here. I just snagged a little thread from the corner. Okay, are we back in business? How about that? Okay, so I'm going to go down here. Okay, and I'm going to show you when I get this one done. If you're worried about, sometimes I go in through the top hole if that bottom one is really tight and it feels like it's going to cause me trouble. I'm not particular about making sure all my X's go the exact same way and at all. And then once I'm done with this row, I'll show you how you can do a stitch that will, if you don't like this method, that will prevent your thread from slipping back. Okay. So now what we're going to do is we're going to come through. I still want my stitches to face the same way, but now if you're concerned about that thread falling under the stitch, you're going to go start at the top right, and you're going to go down to the bottom left. Then you can cross, and that will lock it into place there. If you want to do one stitch at a time, a lot of people like to do one stitch at a time. So you're going to come up through here, because that crosses over 2 stitches, then it won't allow it to fall through or fall under that other thread. I personally prefer to do a row of stitches at a time and then come back, you know, to do a half a leg and then come back and cross them, because I don't think that my stitches look as nice when I do them individually like this. I don't know what it is about it. I know that there are plenty of people that do. It's just not my preferred method. And this one is a little tight in the corner, so I'm going to go up this way. Okay, so then you have the trouble that you're over on this side. So, and you have to work your way back. So then what I do is I go top right to bottom left, and top left to bottom right, and then cross over, and that locks in your stitches. So you can do just whatever way feels comfortable to you, whatever way you think you're going to get the best variegation. Or you could do this way. Like I said, I just don't worry about my stitches going every which way. You could come back and just do your regular So there's just lots of ways to do this and get the exact same result. Now, if you want to go, this is kind of more what I remember. I had a friend who used to do a lot of embroidery, and this is what she would do, because she always was doing just, you know, she was doing like needlepoint with, not yarn, but with wools to do pillows and things like that. So you only use a half stitch. So she would come up at the top right and go down bottom left, and then come up top right again, down bottom left, up top right, bottom left. And then you never have to worry about that stitch slipping under either. And then you can just go back and cross regularly. Let's see, where'd my stitch go? Oops. Okay, don't watch me do this, because I just am gotten kind of lost where I was. Oh, there's my problem. Okay, went down the wrong hole. So cross just per usual. Right, and I'm going bottom right to top left to cross over. Hopefully you can see that. I'll do that one again because I kind of muddled that. Okay, so we're going to go top right corner to bottom left. I can get it in there. Okay, and then I'm going to go back up, top right corner to bottom left. And work my way all the way across. Oops. And then when I cross back over that second leg of the stitch, I can just proceed as I normally do from bottom right to top left, and I can go straight down now because my stitches aren't going to go anywhere because they're crossing over the stitches that are already placed underneath, and they're just kind of locking them in. I have Henry sleeping on the floor behind me. Okay, so that was it. And again, I'm going to show you, I just stitch as normal. Normally I stitch like this. I go top to bottom and then I cross them on the way back. This is also how I stitch in hand. I do this exact same method. It also happens to be how I stitch with a hoop. I just could not get the hang of stitching in hand any other way, so I made it work. I know that there are some of you that do this as well when you're stitching 1 over 1. If you do, I would love for you to comment below or just say how you do it, so so it's helpful to anyone else who might read the comments. So just kind of say when you're starting, you go in top right, top left, bottom whatever, to top right or whatever. Just kind of gives people a path. And then whether you stitch, I would love to know whether you stitch. And this is specifically when you're stitching 1 over 1. I think it'd be a little confusing if you're talking over 2. So let's just stick with instructions on how you stitch 1 over 1 for this video, so that others reading the comments don't get confused. And then you can kind of look through the comments, see what will work best for you. Or if you know for sure that this isn't going to work for you, then maybe someone else has a suggestion of what would. Okay, and I'm going to just, because I missed these, so I am going to fill those in. And I'm just going to hop up. See, I skipped that bottom one. I'll come back to it. If you're super picky about your stitches and that they're all laying in exactly the same way and you're always going through the exact same hole for every stitch, then you can use this method to just kind of lay out a map for your own personal stitching style. But I'm just not that particular. I stitch just for the enjoyment of it, but I understand that there are people who part of the enjoyment is having everything go all the same direction. And I'm going to hop up here, and then I'll just start on this other side. And I'll catch some of these on the way back. Actually, maybe I won't. I'll just keep filling these in. Teeny tiny stitches. I really enjoy this. So there I filled in most of those blocks, and I'm just going to come down here, fill this one in, and this isn't the end of the tree. Oh shoot, you know what? I think I made a mistake. I'm going to stop here because I don't think these are supposed to be filled in with blue. Dang it. And I am not going to pull those out. I will actually just stitch over them in the blue and you won't even notice them. But these I know are supposed to be filled in. And this will be a little bit messier on the back because I did all my stitches a little differently, which I don't normally do. But I will show you the back. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. Oops. All right, and that's what my back looks like. I don't worry too much about it. And you can see this one's a little messier than my other motifs. Just because I was jumping around there. But you can see how nicely these look. So that's how I would normally do it. And it just looks beautiful. So there's a little 1-over-1 lesson. I hope that helped you. And I hope you'll give it a try. Have a great night, everybody. Happy stitching.